Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Streaming Alchemy. I'm John Mahoney, and on today's show, we're going to look at how you can control a PowerPoint presentation running on a separate machine using scripting and shortcuts in vMix. But before we get into that, first, I want to thank everybody for joining us on this special Thursday edition and for your patience with the issues we had for last Friday's show. So thank you all for that. I also want to invite everybody, if you have any questions, have any comments, any thoughts about what we're covering, just put them in the comments and we'll try to get to everything live. So we'll make this as interactive as possible. So make sure we cover everything you want addressed here. Also, we welcome, if anybody wants to join us live on air, please, we have the link in the show notes and here on the screen. So if you'd like to join us, we can have somebody from the studio get you on air with us. All right, so let's get started. PowerPoint seemed to be a pretty big topic for a lot of people I've talked to recently, not just here in our Streaming Alchemy community, but more broadly than that as well. And probably the biggest challenge with PowerPoint is that it really doesn't have a external interface for control. PowerPoint itself is really designed to either work sort of in the Microsoft ecosystem where you can do scripting between different Office-based applications, or just manually operate it via keystrokes. So in order to make this mechanism that we want to use work, we have to find some way of getting keystrokes into PowerPoint from vMix. And to do that, we are using a program called VICREO, and it's vicreo-listener.com. And what VICREO does is it allows us to send a JSON packet over a WebSocket to a remote system that will then, and it will then translate that WebSocket, that JSON command into a specific keystroke that can be played out to whichever application has focus on that remote machine. So that's the premise of what we're doing here. But there's a lot of detail that sort of sits behind that. So let me just show you to give you a, gonna pop this over here so you can see this is the system that we are controlling. And so I have this here on the output. And so you can see this is sitting back over here behind me. And what you have sitting on the left-hand side of the screen is VICREO. And VICREO is just a small utility application. And you have PowerPoint that's operating next to it. PowerPoint should have the focus. So if I tell it I want to start the presentation, I can do that. I can sort of move through slides, do everything I want to roll these slides out. So this is basically the type of control, totally hands-off, totally separate system that we're going to be controlling now through vMix and scripting. So before I get any further into that next piece, let me go. There's a lot of comments here, so I want to make sure we get to everything that everybody's been sharing here. So let's see, what do we have? So we have Vlad is saying hello. Vlad, thank you. If I remember correctly, you are staying up well into Saturday morning to watch this, so I definitely appreciate that, Vlad. Thank you. So we have Bill Mew. Bill, hello back from just outside Trenton, New Jersey, here in Robbinsville. So thank you. And yeah, we think there was a lot of interest, and people have said to us here on the Streaming Alchemy community that this is a topic they'd like. So hopefully you do find it interesting. Spatial, always good to see you here. Thank you for joining. So automation for vMix. So hello from Vargada, Sweden. So hello, automation. Good to have you here again. Thank you. Michael is sending his greetings from Copenhagen, Denmark. So Michael, good to see you here. Thank you. So, so it's Tim from One Man Stream. Tim, first it was great seeing you out at NAB. So thank you for grabbing me and saying hello. Definitely great to meet you and love what you're doing. So good. Let's keep going from this then. Okay, what else do we have? Okay, I think that's everything. All right. So the best way to get started is probably to jump a bit into the scripting here so we can start to understand a bit about how we're pulling all of this together. So let me split this here. So for the script, we're using the same mechanism that we've used in the past, where I just have a loop running in the background and I send it actions that I want using a dynamic value. And based on that dynamic value, it takes the appropriate action. So in this case, what we're doing is we're saying, I have this loop running and the dynamic values represent actions I want to have happen in PowerPoint. Slide forward, slide backwards, home page, end the presentation, all of the above. So that's what we have here. So as we go through this, keep that in mind that this is basically the template we've been using for most of the season for the scripting. So as I said, the first thing we want to do is use dynamic values. So we have to have a way to set a PowerPoint action, and that's what we set up here. This piece down here is the part that is new. So inside of networks, a lot of connections that are point to point between different systems occur over something called a WebSocket, which is a TCP-based construct that essentially allows me to make a connection with a remote system, then open up a data stream with that system so I can send it information across that stream and it can send me information back. And the way you send that information is in what's called essentially sort of a byte stream. It's basically, as opposed to a string, which is one long concatenated set of, characters that are all bunched together. A byte stream really just breaks that apart. And now you have sort of almost an array of individual bytes that are packaged in a way that can be easily sent out as a stream, one byte at a time. So what we're doing right here is we are defining the WebSocket, we're defining the stream, and we're defining a variable that's going to hold the string of bytes we're going to send. And where the stream is going to be with this remote IP. So this is the PowerPoint system that we're using, and that's the IP address of that. Because when you open this at the TCP level, now we're really talking IP addresses that are going to be used back and forth. So that's how this is set up. Everything we have below this are basically the strings of JSON objects that control the different key presses inside of VICREO. So we have them for start show, end show, next slide, previous slide. All of these things are sort of bundled together in here. And as you can see, it's basically saying, what is it? It's a, the type. The type is a key press. And what key is it? It's F5. And is there a password? Because you can make this secure as well if you wanted to. So all that's in here. And that's all you're doing for each one of these. Is it a single key press? Is it a combination like Control, Shift, something? So all of that is set up here as objects, as basically JSON objects. And that's what we're sending to VICREO to make these keystrokes happen. And so we are basically initializing everything. So we initialize our set dynamic value to 0, which is, as usual, our just wait till you have some sort of command that's telling PowerPoint to do something. And in this, I just documented what each of our commands mean. So you have that as reference in here. And the next thing we're doing is focusing on how do you actually make this connection and send everything. So there were 3 things that we had to set up to make this happen. The first is we had to turn around and create a new WebSocket. And that's what we're doing right here. We said new sockets.tcp client, remote IP, and this is the port. So it's an IP address and a port address. And when we look at VICREO, you'll see that we set this up as the port address that VICREO is listening for these commands to come in on. So this sets up the WebSocket, which we're calling key sender, because we're sending keys. So we have a key stream. I keep saying WebSocket. It's really just a socket connection. So I apologize because there was a difference between the two. So apologies for that. But so we have the key sender, which is our socket that we have set up. We have key stream that we defined, and we're just turning around and saying, so for this socket, key sender, get a stream. So create a stream that we need. And then we turn around and say, and on that stream, set a timeout. So, you will keep trying to send that for this long before you give up. And so that's what we have set up here. And at this point, so that's all the new stuff that we have here. Now, everything below this is really what you've seen multiple times in the past. We have our big loop that runs in the background, and we read the XML for vMix. We pull the dynamic value 1 to get the action that we want, and then we have our select case. And so each one of these things is doing the same thing, just with a different a different JSON string that it's using to create the byte stream. So if you look here, what we're doing is we're resetting the action to say, okay, don't do anything else, just wait again. We come and say, create a byte stream by this bit of code here. And all this is saying is, take the string that we have in PowerPoint start show, which is the JSON string, and convert it using UTF-8 encoding to a string of bytes. So you're basically saying, take all of this as a string and give me all of it as an array of bytes, effectively. And then we're taking that array of bytes, that byte stream, and we're writing it to the socket we opened here. And so this is basically just saying, this is a stream of bytes, and this is the number of bytes that are in this stream, so it's just the length of that byte stream. And that sends it out. So that is how we send the keystroke to our remote PowerPoint system. And at that point, we reset the dynamic value back to 0, and we're done. We go back in the loop and continue this. And so this is, even though this seems to be more complicated, it really is a fairly straightforward script based on things that we've all covered before. And so just going through all this, we just after we send that keystroke, we wait a quarter of a second and then loop back and say, okay, do we have anything else, any other key press that we need to take care of? And we go from there. So your gating factor is you can't have more than a single keystroke every quarter of a second, which for most people shouldn't be that limiting. And the worst case is if you do 2 key presses, it'll just ignore the second one, and you end up having to press it again. So not a lot of downsides, but this works now from inside of vMix to control your slides. So before we sort of get to the next step with everything we have here, let me see. I think we have a few more comments here. So let's see. Okay, so we have Eduardo from Argentina, from HD Streaming Argentina. Eduardo, thanks for joining us. I definitely appreciate it. So Udaman, as I am told the correct pronunciation is. Whit, very good to have you here. Thanks a lot. So we have Vlad saying, anybody thinks vMix Social will eventually support Zoom meeting chat? I I don't know. That's an interesting thing. That's probably something we can talk a little bit about during the post show. So thanks for bringing that up, Vlad. I appreciate it. Okay, and John Drinkwater says you make it look so easy. To be honest, John, I mean, there are a few commands in here that are new, but this is basically a very straightforward process of sending a message from one system to another and having it act on that. So it really is, I won't say easy, but it is very straightforward and logical. And we will post the code up right after the show. So, you'll be able to get at all this and tear it apart yourselves. So hopefully you'll find it useful. And we have Samuel Nordvik from Norway. Samuel, thank you for joining us here. Great to have you here again. Okay, so let me jump into the vMix session over here, and we can just dig a little bit. There's not a lot I really want to cover here, but let me sort of put this up so we can see how we have this set. So essentially, I have a set of shortcuts that are basically setting the dynamic values. And this is something we've done in the past. So everything I have over here is just setting a dynamic value to do something for the most part. So these ones are a little different. This one starts the script running in the background. And these up here control potentially what you'd have on screen. So I could turn around and say, I actually just want to put slides on screen. I want to have both. Or I want to just cut to the presenter who's doing that and then go back. So it gives you just sort of some simple options for when that presentation is taking place. And we'll show you in a minute why that can be really useful. And then everything else here is basically based around the same keystrokes that we're doing, where you move between the different things. You can end the slide presentation. You can start it up again. One of the nice things that PowerPoint does have is the ability, say you needed to do something on screen, or you wanted to have a deeper conversation about something, you can just black out the slides or white out the slides based on whatever would work in the environment you're in, and sort of blanket so you can sort of pull everybody's attention back to you and come back. So multiple things for working with slides are all covered over here. And so, let me just sort of pull this up again so you can see it. So all that over here is all just around the slide control. So why is this useful? There's two reasons. The smaller reason is that this means that now inside of vMix, you can have things script. So like if I go into when I move to a particular slide, I could actually add logic so that if the slide, if I'm at a particular slide, I could do certain things that I'd want to do. You can trigger things on slides using web links. So different ways to do that. So this just gives you a little more programmatic control. But where this really can have a big play is you have the ability now to let somebody remotely control this. So if we had somebody coming in over live to air, what we could do is we could do a simple port forward to the vMix controller to let them control this. So let me explain this. So I'm going to slide this sort of out of the way here, and let me see if I can get. We're going to use up my phone here as an example. So let's see. If I put this back in here, you got something. Yeah, move this out of the way. All right. So what you can probably see here, okay, is I have essentially an interface into the vMix controller. We have that as our internal IP address, and the port number is 8088. So the way you can set something up using port forwarding, that's how you're going to let that remote person use it. You can give them a public IP, something to your studio, and a public port, and you just say map that port to your internal address of your vMix system and the port 8088, and they will see this. So this control gives you everything. So somebody could be, so if this man in the little box up there was me giving a presentation, I could simply sit there and go, I want to go to the next slide, and just step through everything. And this, I now have full control of everything I'm doing. I can jump back to the home slide. I can end the presentation. I also have, now this is where those controls come in. If I want to turn around and say, I want to actually just put myself on screen because I want to talk a little bit more directly, I don't have to cue somebody to do that. I can now just go and say, okay, I can move and do some basic framing controls around my presentation that can be handled or remotely. And this, there are lots of different ways to do that. So in doing this, there is something. So I want to jump back to my vMix screen. And there is something very important that you need to set up in doing this. So if you go up to settings here, and you go to web controller, so that's right here in your settings, you can see this is all the details that we have. We're enabling it. There's our port. This is the website address that you'd go to. We actually put a password in, a username and password, to handle this. And this is the important part. You can say, allow access to the following pages without a login. So what this means is that you have the ability, when you do that port forward, to just send the shortcuts page out to your remote presenters. And all they'll be able to do is push buttons that you assign to the shortcuts. Now, you may have a lot more shortcuts in your production than you'd want to make available externally. But the great thing here is that you could actually have another vMix system run that just handles PowerPoint and has all the things, basically what we have set up here, a couple of different ways to frame it and controls for moving through the slides. And that would keep people completely away from your main production vMix system. But the real power here is that you now give people the ability to control their own slides without having to use, other internet clickers or anything. This is all vMix based. And I think that is really something that's pretty powerful. You get no limitations on the PowerPoint, all the transitions, the complexity, how media plays. It plays just the way it would play as if somebody were at a podium. But you have automation controls in vMix, and you can give those automation controls to a remote presenter so they can do anything that they would need to with the slide. So hopefully this all makes sense. That's the core of what I wanted to cover here with everything. So let me go in and see if we have any other comments here, because I know this has been somebody that people have been pretty interested in. So it says, if you have a DDNS, you could have a remote operator using that concept. Yes. So if you have dynamic DNS or something like that, you can have that set up, and you could have a URL. So you could have udemand.com/ppt control, and you could have that forwarded directly to here. And you could even have that page under your own security. So you could make that available to somebody and let them do those controls. But definitely something that could use dynamic DNS. The key with all of these things, though, is that you need to have, that needs to be accessible to the external web. So dynamic DNS still needs a internet traversable IP address. And the internal address, this 10 that we had, 10.0.0.178, that is not routable. So that's why you do a port forward. Basically, you're using the public IP address, where you usually just have one or a few of those available to you. You use that public IP address and a specific port, and in your port forward, you take that address and port, and you mount it to an internal, non-routable IP address and port that will be used. And that IP address and port will be for your vMix system web controller. Okay, let's see. Is that okay? So I think that's everything I wanted to cover in here. I know this wasn't a very long show, but what I'd like to do is we can swing into our post show, and hopefully, if there are any other questions that come up, we can dig into any level of detail. And I know Vlad also had a thought about vMix Social and supporting Zoom, so we can see where all of that goes as well. So let's see. So well, Vlad, he just threw up another question. So he says, is the PowerPoint from a remote location? So right now, the way I have this set up here is the PowerPoint is on a distinct system from vMix, so it's across the network. And the only thing that you would do to make this accessible remotely is what I was talking about with the port forwarding, where when you set that up and you give somebody access to basically to all of the, it's a little hard to get the focus in there, to all of the shortcuts you have set up for PowerPoint navigation, then they'll be able to control it fully remote. So, all right, so I'm going to wrap the main show, and we will jump into the post show. I just want to remind everybody that we do not have a show tomorrow. So this was sort of our bridge show between last week's technical difficulties, and tomorrow's show. So this is going to be it. But we will have a show when I am back online again next Friday, a week from tomorrow. So if you can't hang out for the post show, we will see you a week from tomorrow. If you can hang out, we'll see you in a few. Take care, everyone. Hello, everyone. How are you? Welcome back to the post show here. So, hopefully this was something that you can start to build from for other things. So, Michael just has a comment. He says, "That's a lot. Spin off tons of ideas. Sorry for the lack of questions. There's no problem at all with that. I think." For a lot of what we end up doing, these things apply across the board to lots of different things. So you could be using something like this. Somebody doesn't have to be a remote guest, but the same mechanism could be used to do things that call up different lower thirds and graphics. So you could turn around and say, I want somebody, just working remotely, but I have everything. I'm not really set up for a big remote where I'm pulling in SRT feeds with graphics overlays, but I'd like somebody to control it remotely, and I can show them a return video. They come in like a guest, but they're not really on air. They're just working as part of a remote crew. So lots of different ways to apply sort of port forwarding with shortcuts, and even with things like keystroke control, where you can have people direct keystrokes to specific apps. So hopefully some cool stuff in there for everyone. So Whit Prophet is saying another great show. Thank you, Whit. I appreciate that. So hopefully you'll be able to tie all this together with some of the other cool stuff you're doing. So John Drinkwater says, love the closing music. Is that new? No, I mean, that's something that we just had as sort of a little bit of a bridge. So though that piece wasn't most of the music that we have for the show was done by Martin Mahoney Music, my nephew. So figure it. I've been using his efforts for the past several years. So I figured it's about time I gave him a little bit of a plug. So thanks, John. So yeah, so Vlad was asking about, does anybody think vMix Social will eventually support Zoom meeting chat? So I'm not 100% familiar with the chat inside of the Zoom chat inside of their API, but my suspicion is that it might be a little difficult to do that because Zoom chat is probably, sort of it wasn't designed to be deconstructed. I think it's sort of a single block entity. So they may give you a visible window, which, I mean, most people, if you're doing something with that, they just cut out, take something like an NDI feed screen capture and, crop that out to put the chat on the side. But I do not know of any plans or if that capability exists in the Zoom API. But my guess is if that's something you really wanted to do, cutting it out from a screen capture is probably the best way and can give you at least placement control for how you do it. So basically almost a screen like we have here where you could put the chat on the side and go through what different people are saying there. All right. So this was despite the issues we had last Friday. This was actually a show I was looking forward to doing here because I think it opens up sort of a framework for working with things remotely with people. And for today, I think that's kind of important. We have a lot of people that are trying to figure out ways to staff productions and not to have all the travel. So hopefully this is something that you'll find cool ways to apply. And if you do, I'd love to see some of what you're doing. So please, just share it in the group. That would be great. So Vlad is saying he learned from a show we had in season 2 that you can store XML, an entire XML data set, into a dynamic value. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things inside dynamic values is it's just holding text. So I think the limit may be 255 characters inside a dynamic value. I'm not exactly sure. But you can do more complex things with dynamic values and use XML parsing tools. My take though is if you're really looking at things today, I know that vMix is really based all around XML, but JSON is probably, if you're going to be just manipulating your own data, JSON may be a better way to go, from a programming perspective, just because it has more immediate support in a lot of different applications and is probably the more broadly accepted data expression format for web-based connectivity and processing, which is basically what a lot of Visual Basic scripting is. Okay. So John Drinkwater says there is a social plugin that will get Zoom chat. So that's great. I mean, I'd have to see what they have in that, but definitely interesting. I know that they've been trying to open up more and more of the things that they do around that. So let's see. So yep, Social Stream and GitHub. Okay, definitely something I'll have to take a look at. So thanks for sharing that. I appreciate it. All right, so let's see. So John's saying he's been using the Ben Cupper. Hopefully I'm saying Ben's name correct. Ben Cupper PowerPoint OSC for my remote control. Yeah, so, I mean, there are lots of different things. So, I mean, OSC has been around a long time and is really broadly supported. So definitely another way to handle this. I really haven't done much with OSC directly for different ways to work with it. So that's not something I could speak to with any authority, but definitely, there are multiple approaches, and that sounds like definitely a very interesting approach as well. So let's see. That is a browser extension that can pull the Zoom chat when joined via browser. So, okay, like I said, I'm not as familiar with sort of the whole API for that, but I definitely have to sort of catch up on that front. So that isn't something I've been very deep into, but good to know that there are certainly a range of ways that people can integrate the components of their production into something that's more granular and configurable. So thanks, Vlad. All right. So I think that's, we've pretty much covered everything from this show. Hopefully, everybody got something out of this. I know it, like I said, it was a shorter show than usual, but everything that we do is really to get people thinking, and I hope we've accomplished that. So with that in mind, I think we're going to wrap this show up, this post show here. And as I mentioned, I will see everybody a week from tomorrow on another show. I will be away. I have a christening to attend for basically my nephew's daughter. He just became a dad, and so we're doing the christening, and it's up near Massachusetts, New Hampshire border, that area around there. So that's where I'll be this weekend. So until next Friday, take care, everyone. Thanks a lot. Oh, wait, you the man says he wants to get a plug in here, asking you do a show on virtual green room and vMix. Certainly, that's something we can do. There are a lot of different ways to handle that. So definitely something I will get in there for you. All right, you. Thank you. You just made it in under the wire with the comments. So thanks a lot. Okay, everybody. Until let me make sure. Let's see. We have a few more. No, okay. I think we're good. All right, everyone. Take care. I'll see you a week from tomorrow.